The conflict arises when a president attempts to use the executive branch's operational control over federal disbursements to impose policy preferences on state and local governments. This executive action, known historically as impoundment, is usually deployed against cities that adopt policies the president opposes, such as the sanctuary city policies that limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. Summary and legal foundation. The core of the issue lies in the separation of powers established by the U.S. Constitution. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7, the Appropriations Clause, explicitly grants Congress the power of the purse, stating that no money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. This means Congress, the legislative branch, decides what money is spent, and the executive branch is obligated to execute the law by spending the funds as intended. The president does not possess the unilateral constitutional authority to override or disregard these spending laws. The primary legal limitation on presidential impoundment is the Impoundment Control Act, ICA, of 1974. Enacted after President Richard Nixon aggressively withheld funds for domestic programs, the ICA established clear procedures. Under the ICA, the president cannot simply refuse to spend money. If the president wishes to delay, deferral, or cancel rescission funds, they must send a formal message to Congress. For a rescission, the funds are held for only 45 days. If Congress does not approve the cancellation, the funds must be released. Any attempt to withhold congressionally enacted funding outside of these defined ICA procedures is considered an illegal, unconstitutional act. The Supreme Court unanimously affirmed Congress's power in this area in Train v. City of New York, 1975. Reasons for the conflict and consequences. Reasons for presidential action. The primary motivations for the executive branch to threaten funding cuts are often political and ideological. By targeting large, politically opposed cities or states, the administration seeks to pressure local leaders into complying with federal agendas, like immigration enforcement or public order measures, that the federal government lacks the constitutional authority to mandate directly. This use of federal funding as a coercive tool falls under the scope of Congress's spending clause power, but the executive branch frequently attempts to impose new conditions that Congress itself did not authorize. Consequences. 1. Constitutional erosion. These actions lead to an executive overreach, challenging the legislature's foundational power of the purse and causing friction between branches. 2. Municipal instability. Cities that rely on federal grants, which can account for billions of dollars and fund essential services like counterterrorism, housing, education, and transportation infrastructure, face immediate budget instability and disruption of critical projects, such as transit expansion. 3. Legal battles. Every major attempt by the executive branch to impose broad, new conditions on existing, appropriated funds has been met with immediate lawsuits by state attorneys general and city governments, often leading to federal injunctions that block the cuts. This expends significant public resources and delays the delivery of services. 4. Federalism violations. The threats often run afoul of the 10th Amendment, which prevents the federal government from coercing states into administering a federal regulatory program, a principle known as anti-commandeering. The courts have generally affirmed that funding conditions must be clear, directly related to the purpose of the funding, and non-coercive. Prediction and solutions. Prediction. Based on overwhelming legal precedent, any presidential attempt to unilaterally withhold or freeze congressionally appropriated funds from a major city due to a policy disagreement will likely be blocked by federal courts. The courts consistently rule that the power to condition federal spending rests solely with Congress via the spending clause, and the president is constrained by the Impoundment Control Act. Unless Congress specifically grants the president the authority to rescind certain funds, the executive branch lacks the power to arbitrarily pick and choose which parts of signed laws to enforce. Solutions and legal recourse. The most effective solution for cities facing such threats is immediate legal action. City and state governments have several avenues. 5. Impoundment Control Act lawsuits. Cities can argue the executive action violates the ICA by failing to follow the required rescission or deferral procedures. 6. Administrative Procedure Act, APA. Challenges. They can challenge the agency action as arbitrary and capricious or exceeding the agency's statutory authority. 7. Constitutional challenges. They can assert that the new conditions violate the 10th Amendment's federalism principles because they are coercive, unrelated to the funding's purpose, or infringe on state sovereignty. In addition to legal recourse, Congress could strengthen the ICA by making enforcement mechanisms even more rapid, reducing the time a president can hold up funding, or proactively passing appropriations bills with stricter anti-impoundment language. For local governments, diversifying funding streams and maintaining contingency funds are practical solutions to mitigate immediate financial shock. The power dynamic will remain politically volatile, but the legal framework is robust in protecting Congress's fiscal authority.